Andy Lee, and we're just about to get started. Hello to everyone on YouTube, and hello. Welcome to Meditation Live. My name's Stefan Ravalli. I'm a host here on Meditation Live, also the host of the Serve Conscious podcast and a meditation mindfulness teacher. And here with me is Andy Lee for part 2 of our series on mindful leadership. And today we're going to talk about presence more specifically. But before we do that, I'll pass things over to Andy to settle us in with a practice. And before we do that as well, I'll remind you, this is a interactive session. So use the chat box, use the Q&A box, put your hand up so we can talk directly to you. And just so you know, these features aren't available on YouTube, only on the app, which you can get at the Google Play Store and the Apple App Store. All right, Andy, good to see you today.
Good to see you, Stefan. So I'll just add that the mindfulness practice part is actually not interactive, so please do not chat during that.
That's a good point.
Step away from the keyboard for this one, folks. And let's take a posture for mindfulness practice, which means that our back is straight, our posture is alert, upright but not uptight, feet flat on the floor, and take your hands and just let them rest in the lap wherever they're comfortable. And when you're ready, just allowing the eyes to gently close, or simply looking downwards with a soft gaze. And just seeing what you notice right now, what it feels like to pause in the middle of a busy day. Noticing the energy level in the body, any thoughts or emotions that are present, just checking in with yourself right now. And noticing the fact that you're breathing and tuning into the sensations of the breath, what it feels like to breathe, not needing to control the breath in any way, just following it in and out of the body. And perhaps bringing your awareness to the sensations right at the nostrils, where the air is drawn into the body and released again. Perhaps noticing the temperature of the breath as it's drawn in and the temperature as it's released again. Noticing any other sensations. Perhaps a tingling. Whatever is present for you as we let our awareness rest here for just a few moments. And following 3 more cycles of the breath in and out of the body. Maybe deepening the breath a little bit for these breaths. Being fully present with each one. And when you're ready, allowing your eyes to open again. And feeling free to just stretch or twist or do anything that feels good right now. Okay, Stefan, I think we're ready to start.
All right, I'm ready to start. Thanks for that practice. It made me realize that I'm not entirely as present as I could be today, which is appropriate to today's topic. And so definitely, guys, let me know how that practice went for you. Anything that came up that you'd like more clarity on, leave that in the Q&A box. And hello to everyone just joining us. Hello, Irisy, Julie, Katie, Kelsey, and Shivani. Really good to see all you guys again. Really excited for today's topic. Our first installment was a really wonderful and powerful introduction into the possibilities of mindful leadership. And before we begin, Andy, did you want to just kind of refresh everyone on what mindful leadership is and what its value and importance is in today's work landscape?
Sure. So as you know, our lives at work and everywhere are quite hectic these days. And how we go about um, kind of getting things done at work and also leading people has kind of followed suit. Things are very hectic and short, and there's really not a lot of time for connection and understanding each other. And as a leader, it's really important to be able to be fully present, which we're going to be talking about today, and to create an environment on your team or with your direct reports that allows them to be successful. Mindful leadership is about being fully present, and using that information that you learn when you're actually paying attention to create an environment of success for your team. And one of the things we had a person last week that this resonated with is it's about um, thinking about yourself as supporting your team, really. Turning that organizational pyramid upside down, where the leader is actually on the bottom, and your role is to create an environment where everybody can succeed. That's one pretty, I think, helpful way to think about mindful leadership.
Yeah, and this shift that's requires a lot of shifts on the level of how we think we need to like perform and present and carry ourselves as leaders, which we were talking about just before we began,
Yeah,
and that's led to some understandings of presence, which is today's topic, as this sort of this state of authority we project. But presence for leadership, in terms of the mindful kind of presence, is
right.
much different. Did you want to talk about what presence looks like when you're a mindful leader?
Yeah, and Stefan, you actually, as you said, we were talking about this right before we went live. Um, Presence, when you take a presentation skills course, can be about using your hands and gesturing and being physically externally present, so that you're taking up space, you're drawing attention, and you're being emphatic, so people know what you're saying and can follow along. And that's definitely very important as a leader. Um, when we talk about presence and mindfulness, it's more up here. It's more a mental state. It's more of a state of awareness. And what presence is really about, in terms of mindful leadership, is paying attention to what's going on right here and right now. It's kind of the leadership version of mindfulness overall. And of course, when we're talking about leadership, we're mostly talking about how you interact with the people that work for you, the people that you're leading, or the people that are interacting with you as a leader, right? And um, the opposite of presence here would be something like being on autopilot, um, or just talking and trying to be the smartest guy in the room and acting as though you have the answers when you may or may not. Um, so that's kind of the not being present version. And there's a couple of other things that we can do to not be present. But presence is about being tuned in, about noticing what's going on around you so that you can take what you observe and help your team or whoever you're interacting with to be more effective.
Yeah, and I'm thinking about this sort of ego-driven leadership that you're talking about, where there's this certain need to project strength, and that's because it's believed to have an effect on the team that's valuable. Like it gets people compliant and aligned and getting the job done, and you're
Yep.
motivating them because they want to please you because you're so strong.
Yes.
But presence, having that mindful kind of presence, must also have a positive impact on the team. And is it maybe more effective, even though we may not think of it as that because it's not as aggressive?
Right. Well, first of all, I think that every style has its time and its place. And certainly there are times when a leader needs to, be very directive and very emphatic about things. That doesn't mean we can't be mindful when we do that. Um, However, that's not really, I don't think that's really the missing ingredient for a lot of leaders necessarily. Um, and because the thing that I think is really important that is often overlooked, as you said, Stefan, is is this idea of being paying attention. You know, in the podcast or in the course that we offered, that this is a follow up to, we talked about a couple of practices that help you to be fully present with your team. But some of the things that often get in the way are things like you were saying, trying to own the room, trying to feeling like because I'm the leader, I need to know more than everybody else, and I need to project that, and people better not challenge me because that's not appropriate because I'm more senior than they are. Those types of things get in the way of actually understanding what's going on and being able to lead your team in a mindful and effective way.
All right, guys, let us know in the chat box what it feels like to you when someone is being present. And it can be a leader in your life, but it could also just be anyone you're interacting with. You know, when you really feel like someone is present, how does that change your dynamic with them and your kind of inspiration to
Mm-hmm.
participate? And I guess maybe I'll ask you that question too, Andy. What does it feel like when someone's present in a team, especially the leader, and what does that tend to inspire in a team?
Well, again, we can talk just a little bit more about what it feels like when a leader's not present, because some of the things that we see leaders do regularly are not very helpful. So, for instance, if a leader has a staff meeting that's very tightly formatted, where everybody has a certain amount of time and you kind of run through it, and there's no real time for interaction or checking in, that kind of thing can get in the way of presence. Um, because in order to generate presence, you need to have some space. You need to be able to interact with people in an authentic and kind of spontaneous way. So it's great to create some space to allow that to happen. Another thing that I see sometimes is that leaders assume that because they're in charge, they can pay attention when they want and maybe not pay attention when they want. So you might see a staff meeting where a leader checks his phone, for emails while the conversation is going on, because they feel like, well, I'm empowered. It's my team. It's my meeting. I can do whatever I want. But that really is counterproductive, because, of course, leaders are always role models. And if you think it's okay for you, other people will think it's okay for them. And that's beside the basic fact that you're not paying attention to what's going on. You're not contributing, you're not hearing people, and they're also not hearing from you. So those are just a couple of examples of things that can get in the way of being present.
Definitely. Got a comment in the Q&A box from one of our attendees. Says that when someone is being present, it feels like they care and they're making time for you. And actually, that makes me think about that old adage: people want to know that you care before they care what you know.
Yes, yeah, that's very true. And I think that that comment is spot on. Um, and it's not only about caring though. It also um, people have stuff to share. They have information to share, and you're not going to get that if you're not paying attention. So another thing that we talked about that is, I think, probably one of the most important mindful leadership practices is simply listening. Okay, learning how to listen in a way that you're fully focused on the person that's speaking with you, that you're taking in everything that they're saying, not just the words, but also the expression and the motivation behind it, um, and really kind of understanding what they're trying to communicate to you, instead of letting them talk until you kind of know where it's going, and then you say, okay, well, I get it. I've had that happen to me. Here's what you should do, and just move on, before you really kind of make that connection and build that understanding.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm thinking back to our previous conversation when you talked about, how it is, a manager needs to be accountable to their emotional temperature of the team. If they're
Yes,
feeling a certain way, that's on you, and also like knowing that they perform better when they feel better, is on you to prioritize your team feeling inspired rather than oppressed.
right.
But you're also mentioning here that when you're present, you're also getting the most value out of your team too. because I guess they're more likely to contribute something of value when they feel like they've got a manager receptive to it, perhaps.
Absolutely. And we're going to talk more about this as we go. I mean, it pops up in a number of places. The next module in this series is about trust. And and we're going to talk a little bit more about this there, definitely. But you have to be paying attention because um, people are constantly trying to tell you, people are constantly telling you things in different ways. And as a leader, you have to pay attention. And I think another thing that I'd like to mention is that this is not always easy, as a leader, because what happens is as you become kind of more and more senior, as you become a higher and higher level leader, people don't always want to tell you things, right? They want to put the most positive spin on it, on whatever they have to say. I know I do that. I like to do that. I mean, obviously, I think I'm honest, but we want to say, okay, how can we present this to the boss in a way that is, okay, this is bad, but here's a good side, um, and also people don't want to get on the bad side of their boss, so they're often flattering and kind. And one person I remember said, when I became a CEO, all of a sudden people were laughing at my jokes. They hadn't before, and they were the same jokes. So as a leader, it's kind of on you. You have to actually work harder to get through to people, to create that connection, to allow them and have them um, be able to connect with you and to be present with you.
Definitely. And everyone, just a reminder: this is an interactive discussion. Definitely use our chat box and Q&A box to tell us, what's happening in your workplace. What struggles are you having, possibly with your leadership or any aspect of it, and tap into Mr. Lee's expertise here. I have a question, since this is a challenge I faced. I've had leadership roles in industries I've worked in, and this seems to really be like a common issue where people are always trying to get feedback, get something out of their team that they're withholding. It's like, contribute something, offer something, tell me what's happening, tell me what needs to be worked on. And
Mm,
people are always hesitant to give, or they're never really giving as much as they can.
yeah.
Can presence help inspire that more in people?
Well, I think it's the first step. And I think we're going to dig into that more actually in the next one, in the next module on trust. But certainly if you're on your phone, or people get the sense that you're on autopilot, or you're just checking the boxes, or um, you're just kind of tuning in and out as you think is appropriate, that is not going to inspire anyone to contribute. That's going to inspire them to kind of check the box on their end and say, okay, that's it. Staff meeting's done. Let's move on. I'll figure this out on my own.
Right. Well, in terms of like the kind of more fine-grained aspects of presence, what skills are at play when a leader is present? What are they doing with their attention?
Um, it really depends on the situation, but generally they are paying attention to what's going on. I think listening is a really great encapsulation of that, which is the first thing you have to do is you have to put your own ego aside, right? And you have to open yourself up to what's going on, not just um, how do people think I'm doing, how do I feel like I'm coming across, that old joke, um, um, well, enough about me. Let's talk about you. What do you think about me? And, there's interaction, and then there's interaction. And the idea of just kind of putting your ego aside and opening yourself up to say, what's really going on here? Another practice we talked about in the course is noticing. You know, just ask yourself, what am I noticing right now? Right? What am I noticing right now? That's simple. Um, if you have that mindset when you enter a room, or when you're in a conversation, that will bring you right back into the present moment, and that will probably give you some information that otherwise you wouldn't have.
All right. And when we are sort of using these practices, to be open and to be listening and paying attention and have the ego set aside, can this like spill over into excess where you're not, I guess, doing the kind of like hardliney managerial
Yeah.
stuff enough? Like when do you know, like, oh, I think I'm just a little too easy breezy with my presence?
Well, I'm glad you brought that up because I think there's a lot of misconceptions about mindfulness in general, and this maybe in particular, where people may think, well, that sounds great, but I've got a job to get done. I can't be trying to sense how everybody's feeling right now. We have numbers to hit. Um, I don't think they're mutually exclusive, and I don't think actually you have to talk really slowly or you have to constantly smile to be a mindful leader. You just have to use your God-given gift of paying attention, of using your brain in the most effective way. That's really what we're talking about. And I think that resonates with everybody. You can, and having said that, also people can misinterpret things, and you have to be careful because if you're paying really close attention to somebody, they may assume that that means you agree with them. And it doesn't necessarily mean that. Um, However, it means that you're listening to them. And if you disagree, it's not because you misunderstood something or you don't value your opinion. It's because other things that so there's a difference between listening and agreeing. And you can even say, so you think that the issue is this is causing this and that. Is that right? And they could say, yeah, I'm glad you understood that because I've been trying to say that. And then you can say, well, I can see why you might think that, but as a matter of fact, I happen to know that this is causing this. And then they'd say, oh, okay, well, that makes sense. So just because you're listening doesn't mean that you're giving in, that you're giving anything away, or that you're agreeing with someone. It just means that you're honoring them and you're paying attention to them enough to make them feel heard and recognized. And that's going to help you when it comes time to actually change their minds, to influence them, because nobody wants to be influenced if their opinion hasn't even been heard and understood.
Right. And I guess you can sell your differing opinion a lot better if it's prefaced with you saying, I understand what you're saying. I completely understand you. And someone's going to be more receptive to the opposing opinion if they feel, I guess, understood to begin with, I imagine.
Yes. Yes. As Stephen Covey said, seek first to understand and then to be understood. That's exactly it.
All right. Powerful stuff. I guess we're a little past 20 minutes now, but we'll keep going a bit. If you have a moment, I've got a couple more questions here on the topic that I think would be really interesting to address. So, but if anyone that has to go, you can definitely be on your way. We're just going to talk for a few more minutes here. So, in terms of being in a state of presence, you've already talked about how that can happen without sacrificing any managerial imperatives. You can still be, you know, the manager that your organization needs you to be. You know, and earlier you also talked about how presence can exist in like really like, high octane, tasky, delegatey situations. How does that look? Or does it not look that much different? It's more the internal state of the manager is different. Or does it look different externally?
I think it's probably hard to tell. It may look exactly the same, um, but I mean, I would think that maybe there's always that moment where you say, "Do you understand?" or "Do you get it?" Do you understand what needs to happen right now? Do you have any questions about this? Instead of, in a crisis situation, you may need to direct people, but you still can't turn off your listening mode, um, even if it's just to make sure that people understood what you said, understood exactly what you need them to do. Um, mindfulness, I mean, this is really important in things like first responders and things like, a crowded restaurant where you have like 12 tables at once, those are actually in many ways the most important times to be mindful because the margin for error is very slim. So it can look very similar. The only thing I would say is that you're still aware of what's going on around you. You haven't just shut it off and are working the plan. You're still kind of tuned into what's going on.
Absolutely. I love that you brought up hospitality since that's my background and it is and always has been the ultimate test to my mindful life.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's really serious. I mean, I would compare it to like an ER room with less stakes. I guess you're just selling actual stake rather than high stakes, life or death, you know. But yeah, it's like there's still a mindfulness in motion that occurs and can occur that you don't have to lose touch with. And I guess there's also like what you're describing here. There are still little opportunities. They might be narrower sometimes, but you have to take those little opportunities to be present, to show up for people as the listener. And
Yep.
they're still going to be there. I mean, you don't have to sacrifice it all
Yep.
in a high speed environment. There's often more space than I think a lot of people think, maybe sometimes too.
Well, sometimes also it's you have to constantly calibrate because sometimes they go fast by slowing down. Make sure that you're doing the right thing instead of doing the wrong thing really fast or doing the wrong thing twice. You can do the right thing and take enough time to do it right. And the other thing I would mention is that mindfulness is not just about focusing on what you're doing here and now. It's noticing what's going on all around you here and now. And especially I think in the service industry, it takes both, right? You need to be focusing on what you're doing, and you need to be constantly be scanning around to saying, who else needs something? What else is going on around me? You can't just shut down that faculty either.
Absolutely. I can attest that I got faster and more efficient, not by physically getting faster. I had to get mentally slower internally.
Right. And that's right. That's the truth. That's the same for all leaders. I mean, we're not just, this is interesting because we both have some experience in this industry, me mostly as a customer, but, you know, any leader, it's the same thing. You need to be focused on what you're doing and also keep that peripheral awareness going as well, especially when things start moving really quickly.
Definitely. Wow. I'd love to keep talking about this. I mean, we can just talk about hospitality for the next hour, but we have to let everyone go now and get on with their lives. So I'll pass things over to you now. If you'd like to close with a practice, I'll first just say thank you so much. That was a really, really valuable discussion and
Thank
really
you.
looking forward to applying this.
Thanks, Stefan. And thanks to everybody who tuned in today. And as we leave, why don't we just take, again, 3 mindful breaths together, just allowing your eyes to close and consciously drawing in the breath and giving a long out breath. The length of the out breath is what relaxes us. Breathing back in and a long, slow out breath. Breathing back in. And one final long, slow out breath. And allowing the eyes to open again. That's it.
Thank you so much, Andy. You have a great day.
Okay. Okay. See you next week. Bye, everybody.